Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us here today on Fluorescently. Now today I'm going to be showing you how to make a mounded arrangement. Now this is a very easy arrangement, this is a very versatile arrangement as well. It's perfect for a gift for someone, for a centerpiece. It even really works well for weddings. So if you haven't done floral design before, this is a great one to try first. So what I'm going to do today is show you how to make more of a squat, kind of more mounded arrangement in this beautiful cube. You could certainly use a glass or a ceramic container, whatever you want to use, that's perfectly fine. But just keep in mind that as we're making this arrangement, it's going to be kind of a mounded shape, kind of like a little mini bush, if you will. So let's go ahead and get started today. The first flower we're going to be working with today are hydrangeas. Now, hydrangeas are a beautiful flower. They're one of my favorites to work with. Most florists should have these available, as well as grocery stores or really anywhere you purchase your flowers normally. They should be available there. And what I love about working with hydrangeas is that they take up a great deal of space. And when we're working with a mounded arrangement, this is going to take up a great deal of space in the container, and it's going to act as a really nice foundation for us as we start putting our arrangement together. So first of all, I'm going to go ahead and give this a cut. Now, don't let this scare you. We're going to cut it kind of short, and for whatever reason that kind of spooks people when they're first starting off with floral design, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice fresh cut. And you'll also notice there's some foliage towards the bottom. You always want to make sure you pull off any foliage that's going to fall into the water line. We don't want our water source to be clouded with a whole bunch of extra leaves and stems, so we're going to make sure that we pull off anything extra that might cloud that water source. I'm going to go ahead and just very easily fit in my hydrangea, and you'll see right away that's taking up quite a bit of space. This is going to be a really nice foundation for us. So I'm going to take another stem here. Again, pulling off that extra foliage. We don't need that in there. And we're going to go ahead and give it another cut here. There we go. And you'll see that takes up a whole other corner there. We've got our third hydrangea, making sure there's no other extra leaves to go in the water source. And you'll notice sometimes that when you're designing that you may not have cut it short enough. That's okay. You can always cut a little bit more off. You can't put any more back on the stem. So make sure that we take our time in cutting that and make sure that it's just the right length. Now you'll see it has almost completely filled in our container, and that's perfect. That's going to be a great foundation for us. Now, when you work with hydrangea, you may not even need to use any greenery, but just for today, just to kind of show you what that looks like, I am going to use a green for today. And we're going to be working with one of my favorite greeneries. This is called Gunny or Gunai, I've heard it pronounced both ways, eucalyptus. And I love working with eucalyptus. It kind of has a silvery kind of look to it. It's considered a silver green because it's not really like a bright green or even kind of washed out. It just kind of has a blue undertone. This is a wonderful greenery to work with. And one of the things I enjoy using this for are mounded arrangements. You'll notice that this stem has a couple of pieces that we can actually cut apart and then have multiple pieces to work with. So if you want to save money on greenery, try to go for a greenery that you can cut into pieces. And so I'm going to go ahead and start putting my eucalyptus in. Again, I pulled off any extra leaves or stems that might get into our water source. I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice cut. And I'm just going to start kind of putting this around the outside and working my way in. And it just kind of extends the size of our arrangement, kind of gives it a little bit more body. See here, I've got a place where I can do another cut, actually get a full another piece. I'm going to go ahead and pull off my greenery stems. I'm just going to fill in around my container here. And the eucalyptuses have such a beautiful scent anyway. If you want a greenery that kind of does have a scent to it, this is a great one to use. It's not overpowering usually, so don't be afraid to use it for that reason. I've got a really nice stem here. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of cuts. Again, pulling off that foliage. We don't want that in our water source. And you'll see very quickly how this greenery just extends the side of the arrangement. And I don't even really need to use too much. I personally love using greenery. I put it in just about everything, so I tend to use probably a little more than maybe others might, but don't be afraid. As you're learning to do floral design, don't be afraid to develop your own signature style. So I think I've got enough stems in here now at this point. And so we have a nice foundation set in place. The next thing we're going to start putting in is our feature flower. And today's feature flower that I'm going to be working with are roses, a big favorite for a lot of people, but I'm going to be working with a rose called Tiffany. These are Tiffany roses. That's the color of the rose. And you'll notice it has a beautiful center. It's a heavy petaled rose. There's a high petal count to this one. And what I love about it is that it has a tulip shape. There's two main styles of type of rose. There's a bullet shape and a tulip shape. Bullet usually is a little bit more closed, kind of more of like a cylindrical kind of shape, whereas that tulip has more of a rounded, kind of open kind of shape. So this will open up really big for us, and eventually will take up quite a bit of space in our arrangement. So I'm going to go ahead and start off. I'm going to pull off a few of these outer petals. These are called guard petals. These are intended to protect the flower when it's in its growing process. Those tend to look a little damaged, a little dark. Oftentimes when people go to a flower shop, they'll see roses that still have those petals on there and think, oh, that rose is dying. It's not dying, it's perfectly fine. It just needs to have those pulled off, and that will allow the flower to open up more. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull off my extra greenery. And when we put in our feature flower, we wanna keep in mind, this is the one our eye is gonna go to. This is the one that's gonna make the biggest impact. So we're gonna kind of design it and putting it in the arrangement in very strong places where it's going to be visible. So when I work with feature flowers, I tend to work in kind of a triangle shape so that keeps everything nice and balanced. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by putting my feature flowers in place. Usually when you're working with a feature flower, you usually work in kind of odds, so 1, 3, 5, 7. I'm going to be putting 3 of these roses in today. Again, I'm pulling off my guard petals, making sure that it looks nice and beautiful, giving everything a nice fresh cut. And again, working in that triangle shape. I'm gonna go ahead and put one over here on this corner. Always give your stems a fresh cut whenever you're working with them. The ends of flowers can start to close up within a minute sometimes, so make sure that we're doing that. And there we go, we have a nice triangle shape. Those roses are gonna be equally visible so that everyone can see and enjoy them. So now we have our feature flower in place. Now we're gonna go ahead and put in some secondary flowers. There are lots of different types of secondaries that we could use. It just means not so much that they're less important, but just not as bold as our feature flower. And the secondary flower we're gonna be working with today is spray roses. Now it's called a spray because you'll notice there's a nice long stem with lots of little laterals coming off of it. Any type of flower that kind of looks this way is considered a spray. So these are spray roses. This is called Rubicon. It's a beautiful, kind of a deeper red colored rose. And I just enjoy working with these a great deal because they open up so beautifully. Rubicon is a wonderful red rose. There's lots of different varieties of these. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pull off my bottom foliage. Again, we don't want that in our water. And this is the hard part. This is something that people always struggle with when I'm teaching them floral design, is that sometimes if a rose or a flower of any kind is not gonna fit really well into the arrangement, sometimes it's best just to pull those off. So I know it's kind of sad, but I'm gonna pull off this little stem here. And now that I've got it nice and clean, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a fresh cut. And don't be afraid to cut a couple of times. Like I said, you can always, cut more off, but you can't put more back on. And again, I wanna make sure we're staying balanced. So I'm gonna kind of spread out the spray roses so that they complement the feature flower. I don't wanna obstruct them in any way, but I'm just gonna work around And again, I'm gonna pull off that bottom bloom there. I know it's sad, but in the end, it will all work itself out. Don't be afraid to cut a couple times if you need to. And I'm just working around the arrangement, making sure that everything is nice and balanced. And you'll see right away that this really fills in pretty quickly. And don't be afraid to kind of move things around to make sure that they fill in the spaces that you're trying to fill in. And already it's coming together beautifully. It looks nice and full. It's got a beautiful elegance about it. And the last thing that we're going to put in today is our filler flower. There are many, many types of filler flowers, but the one I'm going to be working with today is called Hypericum berry. Hypericum berry comes in a couple different colors, predominantly reds and pinks and those sorts of colors, but it's a wonderful filler to work with just because it is long lasting. If you're a fan of long lasting flowers, this is a great filler to use. I enjoy working with it just because I think it looks really cute and it's a really fun kind of texture to add to your arrangement. So to put this in, we're going to take off our foliage. Always pulling that off. Some people like to take off the foliage around the berries. It's entirely up to you. I prefer to keep it on in this kind of case just to add a little bit more green to the arrangement, but you could certainly pull those off as well. We're going to go ahead and just kind of fill in wherever there needs to be a little bit more splash of color. And it doesn't take much. And just take a good look at your Hypericum. If you see any blooms that might be kind of falling or breaking off, it's always good to pull those off ahead of time. And don't be afraid to turn your arrangement. Make sure it looks good on all sides, especially at this stage. You want to make sure you haven't missed any gaps. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to pull off my greenery, of course. I see a real spot right here. Good spot. There we go. Excellent. And these colors, by the way, these are very popular right now for weddings. So if you're looking to make an arrangement in this color scheme, these are some wonderful flowers that you could work with for that. Go ahead and add that in. And it just adds a nice little bit of texture. I love working with lots of different neat textures in flowers, and this is a great one if you haven't had a chance to work with it. And there we have it. So this is how to make a mounded arrangement. Now don't be afraid to try other flowers, other techniques to see what works best for you, because part of the fun of floral design is learning your own kind of sense of style. But I'm so thankful you could be here today. Thank you so much for joining us here today at Florescence.